thanks for tuning in to Townsquare Sunday, our weekly public affairs program. Labor Day, of course, is tomorrow, and that means it's appropriate to have a discussion about the American worker and the future of labor unions. My guest is Kim Wilson, Director of the UMass Dartmouth Labor Education Center. Welcome, Kim.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Kim, first of all, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Labor Education Center. What is the Labor Education Center? Maybe we could start there.
Okay, so the Labor Ed Center is a part of UMass Dartmouth, and we've been there since 1975. So our work is to bring students into the community and to do adult basic ed for ESOL and work towards GEDs. So we're located on Union Street. The Workers Ed program is on Pleasant Street in the Star Store. So we stand for education for working people, and we're proud that we were part of bringing what was SMU into action through the founder of our center is Arnold Dubin, and he played an important role, as well as literally building Southeastern Mass University. So we're very happy to be a part of the community in that way, and we want to continue to work deeply in the community.
So your main function is education.
That's right.
Now, and helping folks to get started in the working world. Obviously, the more education folks have, the better chance they get of getting a job. And you are providing some beginning level foundation for workers, for people who want to work.
Yeah, there's two things. One is with current students. We bring them into community organizations as credit-earning students. And then our history is working directly with unions and with worker organizations to do education to help people advance. As well as right now we're encouraging people to get into the online classes at UMass to finish their degrees. The president of the UMass system had asked us to do some work towards that to help more union members be able to finish their degrees. So we're recruiting for that. But our history is doing direct education with workers, and it's been a great process over many years. It's a privilege to be able to do that.
Absolutely. You've been there for 20 years in various positions. Now you are the director of the center. Always been around organized labor. Always had a feel for that kind of work.
Always. It's my passion. And I'm very happy to be able to live my passion through my work. And I started in a cafeteria to organize a union with the hotel and restaurant employees back when I was 20. And since then, I started out as a union organizer and then became a union rep, bargaining contracts and doing internal organizing for healthcare workers. And then I was fortunate enough to see this job in the Boston Globe, and I applied 21 years ago and was hired as a labor educator, and working for Jose Soler, the former director who you might know.
Yes. And
was able to help build the program and bring in some new aspects to the labor centers. So it's been great.
In general, unions have played a dramatic role in the nation, clearly, and in this region, helping to get a fair deal for their members. I would say prior to 1970 may have been the strongest time for labor unions, maybe a little bit before your time.
Yeah, the 50s actually was the highlight.
The highlight, okay. But by the 80s, things changed, didn't they?
Yeah, it was the pulling out of manufacturing specific to our area, as well as the rise of a different kind of corporatization in the nation, in the person of Ronald Reagan, and then leading into more changes and more concentration of money by corporations and increased power.
I was reading a book, and it was an interesting book because it talked about those changes in the 1980s and the corporate changes. Prior to the 1980s, things that was happening in this country were that business owners cared about their workers, and that was their first priority in many cases. Perhaps not in all respects, but I think in general, business owners cared about their workers. But something happened in the 1980s where profit became king, and factories started to close. Factories started to downsize if they were still in business. Factories moved to areas where they could pay less to workers. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, it was a different attitude that happened in this country. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I think that there was a change, but with labor history, particularly of the area, it's not such a new experience. If you look back to the strike of 1928 here in New Bedford, part of that was jobs going to the south. There was a time that there were like partner plants to move production to specific places in the south. And I think it's important too to talk about the rise of automation and changing the workplace and lowering the percentage of unions in the private sector. So I think it does go way back. It certainly goes back in terms of an opportunity for fairness and dignity at work and the democracy that unions can bring to the workplace that is not there otherwise.
And it's never really recovered, Kim, I would say. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I did, in preparing for this, I saw that in 1980, the level of unionized workers was 20% of the workforce. Now it's 10.7. So now our goal is to be able to leverage as much as we can those numbers and grow, and also grow in new ways. But again, the height was around the time of World War II and after. That was when there was the highest rate of unionization. And in New Bedford, you know, there was a time when the factories were here that it was a higher level. And what we've had to do is to work towards increasing unionization in the public sector. That has been a very important move. We do have very powerful unions in this area, particularly if you look at what used to be called Rodney Metals, now Allegheny Ludlam, and now ATI. They had a lockout that they won that was about 2.5 years ago. That was a really exciting show of union organizing in the private sector. Many more examples since then. And I would mention the courage and activity of immigrant workers doing organizing in a different way in the area that I think is really important to see.
So while there are examples of where unions really took some hits, there are some other examples of smaller success stories that are happening even today?
That's true. That is true. And I think that we have a lot of hope that young people have been shown to have more of a positive approach to unions. And that's very exciting. I think how we're going to grow is by connecting to community issues and to broader social justice issues in the community. And through coalition building, working with other organizations, we're going to be able to be stronger. And we have to keep organizing and also organizing internally within unions. But I think it's this broader coalition work that's going to be a part of growing. And we have an example of that right in New Bedford. The labor movement and the Amalgamated Transit Union was able to come together with concerned bus riders. And through that process, we were able to increase service as well as create more evening service, which actually there was none. And that is building, and it's benefited low-income people in the community. But it was a joint effort. Those are the kind of things that we need to do. And that's how, when I talk about leveraging our smaller numbers to still build power, it's through that kind of community work.
My guest is Kim Wilson, director of the UMass Dartmouth Labor Education Center. Kim, the big news on the labor front this year has been the Janus decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. It's been called the most important labor ruling in many a year, and in essence, the ruling overturned the precedent that allowed public unions, teachers' unions specifically, to require public employees to pay union agency fees or risk being fired from their job. That no longer applies, and what that looks to me like is, I mean, that's a real hit for public unions in the pocketbook and perhaps in membership. What do you think about that?
I think that this is our opportunity. We're either going to organize and we're going to grow, or things are going to get worse. And I see signs of things changing and of unions becoming more active. And it's a new era. We knew that it was coming and had prepared. And a lot of people think that this is a sign of changes from Trump, but actually it goes way back. It was the Supreme Court now, and it was changed with the new justice to enable this decision to be made. But it's part of a much longer term campaign by the right wing to increase power. And so this is a way to go after the public sector and the influence of the public sector towards more worker-friendly and community-friendly activities from the government. And the best example is with teachers and the ability of teachers to advocate for better opportunities for students, for more funding for schools. And I think the good side, the flip side of this to look at in terms of with the Janus decision is the inspiration of the teachers that have organized just this year in 5 different states. There have been important fights that have led to increased wages, and these are all in red states. So these are the things that we're going to do to overcome the hit of Janus, but it's not going to be easy, and I wouldn't want to pretend that it won't be a hard struggle. And it is a hit, but we're gonna fight back, and we're gonna organize in the face of it.
Well, would you admit the unions have kind of sat on their hands, maybe, I don't know, last 10 years? And I'm not talking I'm sure you could cite some specific cases where unions have done an outstanding job of organizing and increasing their membership, but in general, there hasn't been a lot of organizing going on.
Well, there has been that's a little bit under the radar screen. However, this is the opportunity to really change our approach, and it's needed. I think that this is one of the best, our response could be the best way to build the labor movement. But we are at this new place. We are at this, I don't know if I would say crisis mode, but we are at a place where we have to change how we work internally and in the community. And as I say, a lot of that has been going on, but this is a real opportunity to increase that. And it's exciting to see in my union. I'm a member of the American Federation of Teachers, and I've seen new campaigns, new movement to engage members more. And I think because the stakes are so high, we are at a turning point, particularly with the Janus case. And how we react to that is going to be the future of the labor movement.
And so unions have to be more responsive, and they have to listen to their members and respond in that way, respond in a way that can help their members. I'm sure those teachers, for instance, who are paying agency fees, some of them probably didn't like it, and people who like this decision will say, well, that, you can either pay or not pay, and that is okay with me. I'm okay with that. From the union's point of view, it's a hit because you're losing financial support and also perhaps a member or two before it's all said and done. So, I think I agree. I think unions have to respond better. They have to really respond to their members.
Yeah, the prediction is the possibility of losing 10% within the public sector, and I think that it's a day-to-day fight to prevent that from happening. And right now, I was actually approached by a teacher knocking on the door to talk about the union, and that there are many new ways to do that. But I'm not pretending that it's not going to be, you know, much more difficult. And that, you know, you look at right to work states, and this is what they faced, this ability of free riders. And by the way, people that aren't members by law have to get the same benefits and the same protection of the union. So it's a real fairness issue, and it's part of a campaign over many, many years of corporate interests to gain more power. And this is a result of it, and we have to react strongly inside our unions and more broadly. And so, you know, again, this is the turning point for the public sector. And I should mention the private sector, which is a smaller percentage of organized workers, are not affected by this. And
not yet.
Not yet, that's right.
Could be coming.
Yeah, it's a little, the history's different, but, you know, the way I see it, that was back in the 80s, that was a goal. It was joined for the private sector. It was joined by issues of automation and of workplaces moving overseas. And so now we're looking at that's going to continue, of course, but we're looking more at the public sector and how we're going to continue going and have broader impact in the community as well.
My guest has been Kimberly Wilson. She is the director of the UMass Dartmouth Labor Education Center. Labor Day, of course, is right around the corner here.
It's our day.
Yeah, and it's a day that I'm sure you mark with some wonderful successes, but with some trepidation because change is lurking around the corner here, perhaps. But thanks for coming in, Kim.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate it.
Townsquare Sunday returns in just one moment.